Drugs, crime, and addiction are all a conversation that our country needs to start having.
We're going to take a closer look at just how lives are affected and what can be done to fix the crisis.
Many Americans, drugs are taboo. They are associated with violence, poor mental health, poverty, and gangs. But are the punishments for addiction-related offenses fair? Many would argue that prosecutions of drug crimes are excessive and ineffective. So is this war on drugs a war worth waging? Are lengthy incarcerations the key, or is the root cause a drug addiction problem that our country is failing to deal with? With the United States comprising 5% of the world's population, but over 25% of its prison population, something seems terribly wrong. We sat down with Reverend Edwin Sanders. He's a pastor at the Metropolitan Interdenominational Church in Nashville, to get his thoughts.
Look at the prison population of the United States, the federal prison population. In 1980, you're talking about a 250,000 people, right around 250,000 people. If you look at that same population in 2013, what you end up seeing is that it has grown now to about 2.3 million. And it's all the byproduct of this so-called war on drugs. But what that war on drugs has translated into is a war on particular communities. Communities that already number amongst those who are the disenfranchised and the disinherited in our society in so many ways.
At the core, many of these drug dealers are drug addicts. Once caught in the system and facing a drug conviction, it becomes a vicious cycle. They get out of prison, they can't get a good job, and they go right back to selling and doing drugs. For people like Jeremy Jones, a man caught up in the cycle, the future seems hopeless.
I lost my job, lost my home, and facing 8 to 12 years in prison. I have a 12-year-old son. I don't want to be a failure. It just seems like no matter what, my background, I just feel like I'm not given the opportunities I deserve.
No job, no money, depression and addiction, a cocktail for disaster.
If indeed the issue is addiction, and there is clearly the desire to deal with addiction, then you need treatment, not incarceration.
So there it is, addiction, the root cause. And why is it so hard to deal with?
Mind-altering substances are very often the byproduct of people who are trying to deal with the hurts, the pains, and the suffering of a everyday life experience that is dehumanizing, degrading, and undermining of their personhood.
So what's the solution? It seems incarceration may not be the best answer. Raising awareness, treating the individual, improving education. Our country has a long way to go, but if we all can take a closer look, it can be done.
Chris, it was shocking for me to find out that the United States, 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prison population, something has got to change.
Well, that's exactly the point that you bring up in your piece. What do you think the United States has to do now for these people that are caught somewhere between the prison system and rehab?
Honestly, Chris, I think it goes back to a mental health problem, a health care problem. There's nowhere for these people to go unless they're rich or have great coverage. So it's definitely a conversation that needs to keep going.